So what a beautiful metaphor of the ark, Noah's Ark, as a sanctuary in a flooding universe, and the power that we have really simply, to retreat, to go into a space where we can manage the beautiful soul that that we were gifted at the time of birth. Good morning. We're in Parshat Noach, a beautiful parsha, and before we get going, I just want to invite people, those of you who have the Slonimer and want to open to the text. We are in Bereshit, Genesis, in Netivot Shalom, the first book. We're starting, obviously, a new cycle of reading and studying through the Torah. And the teaching we're going to visit with today is on page Nun Gimel in Parshat Noach. Page Nun Gimel, and it is the second column on the left under the little bet Uleva'er biyoter mahut hakoach shel Shabbat Kodesh. So Parshat Noach tells us the famous story of the flood, and it's so apropos. It's as we're the greatest concern of our time is climate change and really climate security moving forward, and preventing another flood from happening, sea levels rising, etc. So there's a lot of parallels between the story of Noach and in our times. Parallels that are very instructive. We're going to take this a little deeper into the metaphorical level, and the Slonimer here asks the question: what is the ark, Noah's Ark, a Tevat Noach, as a metaphor? And his answer is it is a sanctuary. So inside a world that was all corrupt, rotten, cruel, violent, a world that was not working for human beings as was intended. So the ark that Noah built was a sanctuary, a safe space within all of that. And in that safe space, there was purity, holiness. There was the seed of, the good to come, right? As a metaphor. And then he asks the question, well, what is a sanctuary in our time? So not a sanctuary in space, but a sanctuary in time, and that is Shabbat, the practice of Shabbat. So we're going to jump into this beautiful teaching about the practice of Shabbat in the context of Tevat Noach, the ark. ולבאר ביותר מהות הכוח של שבת קודש שעל ידו מסוגל יהודי להיחלץ מכל המצבים, אף כאשר רבה ההשחתה ורעת האדם. And we're going to clarify the power of the holy Sabbath, the holy Shabbat, and the practices of Shabbat, or the practice of Shabbat, through which a person can liberate him or herself from any situation, especially a situation where there is much corruption and human evil is present. Yesh lomar, dehine inyan hamabul hu milashon bilbul. And this is a really sweet play on words. If you're not, I'll explain to those of you who are not Hebrew literate. The word for flood is mabul. And the word mabul comes from the word bilbul, which means confusion. So mabul shares the root of bilbul. שנתבלבל כל סדר הבריאה. Why? Because the order of the universe was thus confused at the time of Noah. So we had there was a certain pattern, a certain order that was called for or intended. It got all tossed up, and the consequence, the result, was the flood, the mabul. והעונש הזה היה מידה כנגד מידה. So the consequences of the flood was a measure for measure, confusion for confusion, chaos for chaos. כי פגם דור המבול היה בלבול הדעת. And even deeper than that, the pigam would be the tarnish of the generation of the flood, of the mabul, was bilbul hadat, the confusion of the mind, a confused mind. שזה שורש כל הפגמים, which is really the root of all wrongdoings. So he's probing the source of wrongdoing. Okay, so that generation was a generation of greed and cruelty and violence and corruption. And he's saying, where did that come from? It came from confusion of the mind, from a confused mind. וכמאמר Chazal, and as the sages say in the Talmud, in Tractate Sota, page 3, אין אדם עובר עבירה, אלא אם כן נכנסה בו רוח שטות. A person does not do wrong unless a spirit of silliness or a spirit of unintelligence comes upon him or her. וכידוע, דשורש פגמים אלו של השחתה קשורים למוח הדעת. And as it is known, the root of these wrongdoings and of corruption has to do with mind or with mindfulness. והתיקון לבלבול הדעת הוא על ידי יישוב הדעת. So what is the remedy for a confused mind? And he says it's a settled mind. And here's where he goes into the realm of mindfulness, right? So a confused mind, the remedy for that, or the counterbalance for that, is what he calls a settled mind, or I would say a present mind. ועל כן, השבת קודש הוא תיקון לפגמי דור המבול. And that is why the Holy Shabbat is a rectification, is a fixing for the generation of the Mabul, of the flood. כי השבת קודש הוא המקור והשורש של יישוב הדת, because the Holy Shabbat is in the practice of Shabbat, is the source and the root of a settled mind. So what I want to say here, sort of clarify from, at least from where I sit, this is not about a magical quality of Shabbat. This is about the essential practice of Shabbat, of settling body, settling mind, settling spirit. The sanctuary, the ark of creating a sanctuary, a bubble in time every seventh day, is really a retreat that allows us to disconnect from the distractions and the tumult of ordinary life, of ordinary consciousness, and to sort of maintain our spirit, maintain our mind, according to the Slonemer. It's important for me to say that because sometimes when I read teachings like this, and when you read teachings like this, there's a way that it can be perceived in a simplistic way that Shabbat has some kind of magical power. And perhaps it does, perhaps it doesn't, but the point is that it's the practice of Shabbat, the retreating of Shabbat, the active, the proactive settling that's available in the environment of Shabbat, that is, that has the power, that counterbalancing power, counterbalancing confusion, counterbalancing distractions, and really cleansing and maintaining one's spirit and persona to function at its at its ultimate, at its best, as it was intended. Uchilshon Midrash, and as the Midrash says, commentary, and it's Bereshit Rabbah is the quote here, chapter 10, verse 2. Ala pasuk ve'achulu hashamayim va'aretz. Commenting on the verse in Genesis, in the story of creation, and the creation of the heaven and the earth ceased, and this is right before God ceases and has God's first Shabbat, the seventh day after 6 days of creation. We also chant that when we say the Kiddush on Friday night. Vayachulu hashamayim ve'aretz. So the creation of heaven and earth came to conclusion, came to a stop. And the Midrash interprets that to mean something else, and here's where it goes. Kol zman shaya olam tohu vavo, lo niret melechet shamayim va'aretz. As long as the world was confusion and disorder, tohu vavo, that is how the universe, our reality, is described before creation. Lo niret melechet shamayim va'aretz. The design of heaven and earth are concealed. The evolutionary patterning of heaven and earth, melechet, melacha. Melacha is the making of, the crafting of heaven and earth. The crafting patterns of reality are completely concealed. Kevan shene'ekar tov vavo min ha'olam niret melechet shamayim va'aretz. When tov vavo, the state of chaos and disorder, is taken away, then the patterning of heaven and earth are now revealed. That's a very interesting midrash because it suggests that, opposed to, again, the simplistic understanding of creation, as God as a craftsman or woman, kind of building the universe. What the midrash here is hinting is God didn't actually build the universe. God just removed chaos and disorder to reveal the universe that was already there. It's kind of it's said about Michelangelo when he was sculpting. He wasn't sculpting when he saw a rock. He wasn't sculpting a beautiful figure in the rock. He saw the figure in the rock and he was just removing the dross, right? So this is, the Midrash is saying that about God sculpting the earth, as it were. The order, the patterning, the deep design, of life and reality, this sort of like this grand reality that we inhabit is there, but there's this chaos and confusion that conceal it from us. So the Slonomer takes this to another level, takes the Midrash to another level, and he says, look, what this means is shekol zman shetov vavo ba'olam, hainu she'adam b'vchinat tov vavo, as long as there is chaos and disorder in the world, meaning that the human being is in the state of chaos and disorder, confused and without a settled mind or without mindfulness, then a person cannot see the patterning of heaven and earth. A person cannot really see that there is a creation, that there is a design, that there is a law, that there is a certain order, a deep order in the universe. An order that doesn't readily meet the eye. So as long as a person is in a state of confusion, that is concealed. ולראות מתוכה את בורא הבריאה וכוח הפועל בנפעל. And what else is concealed? That one cannot see the operating force that runs through everything. And this is what we call God. From a more deeper Kabbalistic point of view, God is an operating force. God is a thread that goes through everything, rather than the, old man with the white long beard that sits on, on a cloud. In order to see the operating force, in order to recognize the unity, the unifying field, the essential, supreme consciousness that kind of animates everything, one can only see that when confusion and disorder are removed. And when you and I come to that place of seeing, you see, and this is that real deep place of faith. It's not faith, oh yeah, sure, I believe it because my ancestors believe it, and because it's written in the book, and because I want to do the right thing and believe the right thing and be part of the club of believers. That is also an okay choice if that's your choice. But what about seeing it directly? What about you and I working to remove the veil and recognizing, having a felt experience of the higher order? Imagine that. Imagine that confusion and disorder are sort of like melt away. Then what? What relationship would I have with, my inner and outer environment? So the Slonomer continues and says, "Ve'ein shayach shipol b'inyanei chata'im elu, ki shoresh kol hachata'im ve'hashchata hu bilbul hadat." So he says, it's impossible that a person would fall into wrongdoing, into wrong action, into corruption, violence, greed, dishonesty, in that state, because the root of all wrongdoing and corruption is the confusion of the mind, a confused mind. Asher beyoto מבולבל בלא יישוב הדעת, נופל אז בפגמים הגרועים ביותר. Because when a person is in a confused mind, that leads to really drowning, to kind of reconnect with the metaphor of the flood. then a person drowns into just misdeeds. You know, the regrets start piling up. וכל החטאים שיהודי עושה הם רק בעת שהוא ראוי בחשקות הנפש. And as the Talmud says, a person does wrong only when they are in the dark night of the soul. Sharui b'chashkut hanefesh, literally the darkness of the soul. V'zeu kocha shel Shabbat, and this is the power of the practice of Shabbat. Practice in parentheses. He's just saying Shabbat, but I want to emphasize that it's the practice of Shabbat. In other words, if I just went for a Shabbat dinner with my, more observant friends, and they did everything like according to the halacha and the law, would that save my soul from confusion? I'm not sure. I mean, it's a great thing to go visit your practicing friend if you're not practicing yourself, or practice all the technicalities of Shabbat according to tradition. But I want to emphasize the practice of the Shabbat, the practice of retreat, the practice of disconnecting, of creating an ark, an ark that's floating on top of the flood, that's a sanctuary, that's a safe space within the confusion and destruction and corruption that's around us. Right, so that's the deep Shabbat, the practice of Shabbat. So, v'zeu kocha shel Shabbat, this is the power of the practice of Shabbat. She'al yada nitzol Yehudi mikol ha'pgamim v'hashchata. Through this practice, a person, a Jewish person, a practitioner, is literally saved from all corruption and ruin. Shezoche b'Shabbat Kodesh liyishuv hadat. As a person acquires through the practice of Shabbat a full mind, a settled mind. V'ne'echal mimenu hatov vavo. And disorder and confusion is cleansed away, is uprooted from him or her. Ume'ir alav oro yitbarach, and the light of the Holy One, blessed be, shines upon him. So what a beautiful metaphor of the ark, Noah's Ark, as a sanctuary in a flooding universe, and the power that we have, really simply, to retreat. To go into a space where we can manage the beautiful soul that that we were gifted at the time of birth. So I think it's a beautiful message and a hopeful one. There is a silver lining, even when the clouds of the intense rains that bring the flood, metaphorically, and even in nowadays, with the greed and the confusion, the political, the breakdown of governance, the ruins of our lifestyles and our industriousness and modern technology and waste and all that. So that's on the outside, the way we're living in a world that is in severe breakdown. We're just starting to, with the extinction of species and the rising of sea levels and the changing of weather. If we thought that social and political corruption was terrible, that we're really on the precipice of a crisis, a climate crisis. And then internally, we're bombarded with information. We're living in a world that's not kind to our souls, not kind to my soul. I don't know about you, but I suspect that if you are anything like I am, the constant barrage of information, of an email box that just gets flooded, literally flooded, social media and the multiplicities of media and the overstimulation of that for us adults, for children, it's even worse as an educator. I mean, I see that all the time. I don't think that there was ever a time that we needed retreat. We needed Shabbat, we needed soul maintenance. So I just can't emphasize that more, the practice of Shabbat, not the practice of the traditions and the halachot of Shabbat, but the practice of the essence of Shabbat, of finding and gifting ourselves with the intended, clear and full mind, mindfulness. So Tevat Noach is our metaphor for a well-maintained and well-functioning mind that's capable of processing and opening to the light that comes from above. And with that, I want to wish us all a very good day and a good week, and a good week of Parshat Noach. If you have any comments, I would love to keep the conversation going. Please leave it in the comments below. And until next time, Shalom, be blessed. Please subscribe by clicking the red button below. Like, share, comment. It is great to have you here. See you later.